people were calling him the ghost, and he kind of was like, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just doing what I need to do. And then it gets to the point where he makes the decision to poison the entire Mongol camp, like the entire Mongol camp in the second area in Toyotama. So like
Yeah.
and then he's talking to Lord Shimura, and he's like, gives him the paper, like, they approved you to become my son, right? Like this
Yeah, the
huge moment,
Shogun. Oh my
this
goodness.
huge moment where Lord Shimura, his whole life, never had a son. And he's
Uh,
like, he trained him to be his son. And
yeah.
you see the dialogue at the very end of the game. He's like, I will train you to be my son. But he said, like, they approved you to become part of Clan Shimura. You'll keep your title as Clan Sakai, but you'll become my son. And he said,
Here,
I'm
hold
not
my
your
lane.
son, I'm the ghost. And just like tells Yuna to run, and he goes to prison, but escape right after. But like
Right.
but he accepts his role. And I think that was the moment where me, as like a team Dark Jedi, team Kanan, team Cal, team, these
Oh, okay. Hold on. I can still be Team Kanan
Empire.
and Cal
You
and
can, but
not.
let me explain. Let me explain.
Okay.
The code was it, to them, the Jedi code was dead, right? To Jin, that was in the past, and he had to move on. And so, me supporting this more than you and Jake, I thought it was so cool. Like I was like, oh my gosh, Act 3 is about to go so hard. Like he is the ghost now. We've been doing ghost-like things for
Yeah.
2 acts, and now it's like, okay, now the ghost is doing these things, and we will free Tsushima from the Mongols. Like we will. So
Right. And I mean, that's one of the biggest moments in the game for me that kind of honestly like hurt my heart so bad was the I'm not your son, right? Where I'm like, this I want to be his son. Like I wanted to make those choices, right? And the point, like when that whole conversation he has with Yoriko, which is his caretaker, right? In the Sakai caretaker, where she's the one that's like, hey, I got these flowers and kind of made this is like for rat poison. And then you see the darkness kind of like shift around Jin when he goes, do you think you can fabricate this enough to kill a man? And she was just like, I probably could, but I don't know why you would want that, right? So that moment to me was when I saw like Jin, because like sneaking around doing the assassinations and all that stuff, like I think that's even though that's not the samurai way, I think he was still honored. He still was honorful at that moment, right? Because it's like you kind of have to shift, kind of like what you're saying with Star Wars and Kanan and stuff. The Jedi Order was dead, but he was still able to. He had to shift. Like Kanan and Cal had to shift to survive, but they were still able to keep their honor as Jedi. They're like,
yeah.
I'm still a
Well,
Jedi, right?
yeah, and Lord Shimura didn't like cut him off, like didn't rule it like impossible for him to come back until the poison. That
Yeah,
was the moment where he said, "It's like no matter what, you cannot be samurai."
yeah,
That was the moment, and I think that's why
exactly.
in the story, him saying, "I'm not your son, I am the ghost." In the poison moment where there's no turning back, I think that
Yeah,
just was like that's kind of the moment you see at the end of a game. And that happened to be 2/3 through the game. And so I
right. There
think it
was
was
still
like,
more.
oh, let's go,
Yeah, which again, like that, I think as much as I would want the ending of the story to be like, do you choose to be the ghost or do you choose to be, son of Lord Shimura? Like if there was that choice, that would have been awesome. But the fact that it went down that path where he chose to become like this monster in order to save his people, I think made that the story even more like meaningful and even more like, oh my goodness, like what is gonna happen now? Like is Jin gonna be kind of like in the end of Shadow of War, right? Where Talion ends up taking on the Nazgul. He ends up becoming a ring wraith. And he was doing that because he's like, I need to hold out as long as I can to let the ring bearer, finish his story. And so we see kind of Talion taking on this evil mantle because he had to. He became the monster in order to protect what the good, right? He's like, if I lose myself in the process, it's worth it. And that's what Jin, that's how I thought Jin was going to be, was he's like, this after that moment where he turns and like poisons the entire camp, which I honestly think he had honor up until that point. When he decided to start poisoning the camp and making them like making that, because you'll see it in side quests too. Like you see in side quests where that poison ends up affecting the Mongols end up reproducing it and end up using it on on the rest of the Tsushima, like people, the citizens of Tsushima. And you're like, holy cow, what did Jin do? Right? That part even hurt me even more when I went through it, when I was like, oh my goodness, I poisoned all these people. That was horrible. Okay, whatever. That's over. No, it wasn't. The Mongols are using that poison to kill people now. And it's like, Jin, what did you do? I was like, oh my goodness. But it was necessary, right? We see that even in the end, he was still able to find Kotukan and able to end the Mongol raid on Tsushima. And though it took some tools, though it took some bad choices and some choices that need some hard choices, he was still able to free Tsushima. And I think that's in the end, he may be regarded like a monster. He may be regarded as just this ghost that came and killed, but like everyone will be free and will live happily because of it. And so that was probably like the biggest moment for me in the game where you decide to go down the path of just like I need to stop these Mongols at no matter the cost, like no matter what. Doesn't matter how I do it, doesn't matter what I need to do it. I am going to do it.